I grew up with an interest in music. I grew up playing in lots of bands in Karachi, and producing music, and eventually then DJing, and kind of setting up studios also. I was living in London for a while. Didn't really know what I was doing. Had very basic equipment. Didn't really have anyone to learn from in Pakistan. So just read up a lot. I knew the basics of sound. I'd studied that. I done a short diploma in sound engineering. Zindagi Tamasha is obviously shot in Androon, Lahore. Very kind of thin, bustly streets, very close living quarters. You can always hear the neighbors.
Assalamu alaikum, मैं हूं सरवर खूसर and I welcome you to another episode of Zindagi Tamasha Deconstructed. As you know, it's a podcast series जिसमें मैं गप्पे लगा रहा हूँ, रिकॉल कर रहा हूँ उस जर्नी को जिसका नाम है जिंदगी तमाशा। और आज मेरे साथ एक स्टार मौजूद है। स्टार यूं कि ना सिर्फ जो उनका काम है वो मुझे लगता है कि सिनेमा में, फिल्म मेकिंग में शदीद अहमियत का हामिल है, बल्कि कई दफ़ा मैं ये भी कह चुका हूँ कि मेरे लिए जब आप एक ऑडियो विजुअल मीडियम की या साइट एंड साउंड की बात करते हैं तो सिनेमा में साउंड कहीं 10% मेरा ख्याल है ज़्यादा ही नंबर होने चाहिए उसके अहमियत के हवाले से। दूसरा इनके स्टार होने की वजह ये है जो खुद बताएंगे कि उन्होंने फिल्म में ये कैमियो भी किया जो कि अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमारे प्रेजेंट कट के अंदर मौजूद नहीं है। आई हैव विद मी अ वेरी साउंड गाय, a very sound collaborator and a magician जो कि अपना काम ना सिर्फ बहुत अच्छी तरह जानते हैं लेकिन उसको बहुत डेडिकेशन और बहुत नियत से और कई दफ़ा बहुत ज़्यादा डेडिकेशन से करते हैं। तो our genius sound guy who is responsible for the great sound of ज़िंदगी तमाशा on location जो सारा रिकॉर्डिंग है उसके जिम्मेदार हैं फैज ज़ैदी। फैज, हाय।
Hello. How are you? What a lovely introduction. Yeah, you should write all my bios and everything.
Yes, please, yes. I think I should, you know. And
Yeah.
ChatGPT is taking over in any case, so they would need some human touch.
Did you find it from there? Was that a...
Yeah, I should try.
Well, regarding the cameo that you mentioned, I do think that if there are any unanswered questions in the film, it's because of that. Just in terms of story, because the cameo didn't make it, but I guess that's because of the film length, obviously. No other reason.
I think लोग बहुत परेशान भी थे कि whenever we said ना कि or wherever we could say this is the director's cut, they'd be very intrigued. Is it the uncensored version? I mean, what else is there that the censors took out? So I would say, naji, the film was never massively censored. Even, you know, there were some sound beeps that we had to put in, you know, but other than that, no. So yes, it was just a very long film, and we kept figuring out how to cut it down to a bearable length. But I promise now you will get to see Faiz's cameo in the film too. Faiz, the first question जो मेरे दिमाग में आ रहा है, सबसे पूछ रहा हूँ. This was a turbulent journey. I mean, not the shooting part perhaps, but जो उसके बाद सब कुछ हुआ. How do you feel about the release of the film after such a prolonged kind of delay?
Just relieved. I think I feel relieved and just a sense of closure. I mean, I can't imagine what a huge burden it feels like has been lifted off you. But just as somebody who's been kind of on the sidelines, the shoot was amazing, lots of fun. Every day was exciting. It felt like we were doing something that would be talked about in a positive and constructive way. So that was all amazing. And then I remember when the news came out that it's not coming out immediately, the film won't be released immediately. It just definitely felt like it just felt unfair and like a sense of not anger but just disappointment, I suppose. And then when you said it was coming out maybe like a few months ago, I didn't expect to hear that, so I was very happy, and just felt that it made sense now that it's coming out, and also feels like the right time for it to come out. And it's come out on YouTube. I don't know how people feel about that. I am glad that it's out, and I'm glad that it's out on a medium like YouTube, so that people can watch it around the world. Which I think, if we had had cinema releases, it would have taken much longer for that to be reached. I do think, I remember when we were making it, you also said that it was a film close to your heart, and for lack of a better word, like passion project. So just the fact that many people are getting to see it, I do think that's a positive thing. All the finances on the side, that's a separate thing. But yeah, just the number of eyes. I mean, even now, like almost every day, I get a message from somebody saying that they've watched it, or that they want to watch it. They've heard about it. How can we watch it? Just send them a YouTube link. Easy peasy. Much easier than all the other films that are coming out and people want to watch. So massive positives in there for me. But obviously I didn't invest in it, so it's a different thing in that sense. I'm just glad people are watching it.
Yeah, and otherwise I feel that we're always talking about, how certain stories, or the way you tell stories, it kind of defines the audience, as a preset that, people would say, I mean, how the popular thing is, oh, it's a festival film, or it's a film for the masses, it's a money. But I do feel that those kind of, lines and boundaries, I frankly don't believe in. If a film is good enough, if it's engaging enough, it should work wherever it goes. But with this film, surely, I think the idea or the intent was that people should just get to watch it and talk about it. I mean, this is by a lot of standards not a standard film, and the idea was to have these tedious conversations that we do not have usually, and not really like in a pedantic way, but we're just sort of exploring what we can.
So relevant.
Faiz, Zaidi, first of all, I think other than the the whole controversy, etc., I'm also quite done with it. Sound for you, and you're such a maverick at it also, like you're self-taught pretty much, right? And then you took whatever training later, but initially just started off as an interest in sound in general. And so a little bit about that journey, because I do feel that this tiny opportunity where people do get to meet and know the people behind the camera, and the kind of labor and love and actual blood and sweat that goes into it. So who is Faiz Zaidi?
Well, I mean, props to you for bringing the crew on this. Not many people, directors, producers, do that, and I think it's useful for anyone, not just in sound, but anybody who wants to get into the behind the camera scenes of filmmaking. These are definitely very useful, I think. I grew up with an interest in music. I grew up playing in lots of bands in Karachi, and producing music, and eventually then DJing, and kind of setting up studios also. I was living in London for a while, and that's when I met the first few people that were making films. I had never really known any filmmakers before. This is when I was between age 18 and 21. So I was living with somebody who was a DP. So he used to kind of tell me a little bit about his work. And then my visa ran out. I had to come back to Pakistan. I studied anthropology at university, so nothing really to do with sound. And I'm happy I studied that because it shaped the way I think. But then I had to move back here at age 22. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Wanted to do something in sound or music. Ended up back in Karachi, started applying for lots of jobs in music, applied for stuff in Coke Studio, FM 89, I think, just wherever I could. And then somebody who I had met at Karachi Literature Festival, Zaidi, married to Minu. Mazhar was producing a film. There was nobody really that did location sound in Pakistan at a high level back then. This is 2000 and I think maybe 13. So there'd been a few films. There'd been Jami had done more, or he was finishing more. There'd been Zinda Bhag, done by Meenu and Farjad. Both teams had sound people that came from India or Malaysia, somewhere else. There was no real sound crew. And all other films that had been made and were in cinemas in Pakistan, like Khuda Ke Liye and Bol, were all 100% ADR, which is basically, for those that don't know, it just means that there's no sound recorded while we shoot, and everything is done in post. So every line, all performances are really done in post, which can often mean like, months, sometimes a year after the initial shoot is done, and we're sitting, actors are standing in the studio, looking at a screen and repeating their lines, trying to match lip sync and also trying to perform, which I think is a complete, which is still how lots of films here are done in Pakistan, unfortunately, but I think it's massive, injustice for the actors. I do understand that it's sometimes difficult to get location sound on films, but there are ways. Anyway, so I did that first film with Mazhar in 2013. Didn't really know what I was doing, had very basic equipment, didn't really have anyone to learn from in Pakistan. So just read up a lot. I knew the basics of sound. I'd studied that. I'd done a short diploma in sound engineering, but didn't really have any sort of mentors in person here who were doing film sound. So read a lot, used the internet, videos on a lot of things, and then basically just learned on that first project I did, which was a film. It's the first time I was on a set was as a sound recordist on a feature film, which is kind of really throwing somebody in the deep end. But it was a very good project to learn on. The film didn't get released in Pakistan. Played at some festivals. It was a lot of people's first films in terms of, I think, the DP's first film, the director's first film, some actors' first film, my first film. So it was a good learning experience. That was 2013, and then since then, I guess it's just been word of mouth, and I guess I've been lucky enough to do some film projects that have done well, critically more than commercially, but commercially too, I suppose. So just word of mouth, I guess, and still working.
I mean, not just the word of mouth, Faiz. I mean, I don't know many people who have a Cannes winner, who have at least 3 Oscar submissions from Pakistan, at least 3, right? If I'm not wrong, or maybe more than 3. There's Cake, there's Joyland, and there's Zindagi Tamasha, and Ilal Kapoor, 4. I think.
Been lucky though. There's been good directors.
And the good directors found a good sound guy too. So no offense, but I think this is perhaps not, say, when people ask me this question, or they're interested in knowing journeys of people, but I do feel that I regret that I didn't have an opportunity to go to a film school. But having said that, when you learn on ground, and I think region to region, area to area, the challenges are, really, they're very unique sometimes. And you learn most of it on job. But say, Cake and Lal Kapoor and Joyland, and somewhere in the middle there, you had Zindagi Tamasha. So Faiz, of course, location sound is a tough job, and it is like not only tough because most of the films that you've been a part of are not even based in studios. They're not shot inside on sound stages, but other than that, just there's crew, there's camera, and usually what I've noticed in Pakistan, everybody's obsessed with getting the visual as grand or as correct as they can, but sound somehow is considered like if there was a tier to it, which is secondary in terms of importance.
Yeah.
There's a structure. What were the unique challenges of Zindagi Tamasha's sound?
So number one, I suppose, was where we were shooting. Zindagi Tamasha is obviously shot in Andaroon, Lahore. Very kind of thin, bustly streets, very close living quarters. You can always hear the neighbors. So even the place we were shooting, you could always hear a little bit of traffic, thin alleys with motorcycles, and people that live in Lahore are quite loud sometimes, including little children. So you can always hear little kids screaming from one place to the other. So those things were definitely difficult to deal with, because what you want to do when you're recording sound is try and get as clean sound as you can, and then you can always add those things later. It's very hard to remove those things. But for a film like Zindagi Tamasha and some film that was set in that location, you can get away with quite a few sort of what I'd call exterior sounds. So it gives you that margin and leeway. So it kind of ended up adding things in just by default. The only time that is sometimes a problem is if you're doing a very emotional, quiet scene between two actors, and then you can hear somebody outside on a really, or just somebody yelling something, and it kind of kills the mood, is the only thing. So I'd say the main challenge, I guess, was just kind of trying to figure out how to control the exterior sounds. And because we were shooting in a very thin alley, getting the generator there and then finding a spot for the generator to make sure it doesn't come into the microphones. Yeah, that was an interesting, but my job is all about collaboration. There's no way I can do this on my own. You really need to communicate with the DP and even wardrobe to figure out what people are wearing in terms of materials, because some materials will be noisier than others. Obviously, with the director and the first assistant director, you need a lot of people on your side to be able to do the sound. So I'd say it's almost maybe 30% technical skill, 20% the equipment you use, and 50% is like people skills. If you're not communicating with people properly, then you're never going to get the audio that the film needs. And also explaining to people that it's not my audio, but it's audio for the film. It's the performance. Yeah.
100%, 100% and more. But Faiz, I mean, you are not only, I feel, just a great technician, but you really value the whole storytelling. I mean, you're so involved. I remember that, before making Zindagi Tamasha, I had mostly done television. And for me to just understand what you just said, like, the outfits, the jewelry items, whatever little accessories people have, the layers, and then the locations, definitely, I mean, the challenges were way too many. I mean, and Lahore is noisy. Lahoris are very noisy. I still remember that beating lamp that kept. I think
it's a character in the film now.
And I still remember that, again, you're involved, that, you, and almost, I think it comes from a very sensitive and a clear vision also, that, you know how the scene would look like eventually in the final sort of picture, that sometimes, in the whole sound and fury of it, you're almost like, you get the scene right, and, I'm not a huge fan of retakes, so I would get very anxious, and then like, okay, maybe we can let go, but you would stand your ground. You would really make sure that you at least communicate what it would look like. And I think I'm really, really grateful for that education and for that contribution that you made. Now, when we come to, again, and you're a very gentle person. I know that most of the actors, I think 100% of them, unless you really want to have a little gossip, but they love you. They're very pleased to have you around, and it is a rather intimate kind of connection that the sound person has to have with the actors, and understanding not only their craft, but their moods, so I mean, one has to play along. So the actors of Zindagi Tamasha and your interaction, I mean, so we have Farkhanda, who's Samia Muqtaz, then we had Arif, who is an untrained actor playing Rahat, we had Iman Sulaiman playing Sadaf, and then we had Ali playing, what was his name, Danish, and then a bunch of other people, right? I mean, there was a huge cast in terms of prominent roles. So your take on collaborating with all these actors?
No, the actors were wonderful to work with, all of them. I think, out of the four that you've named, Samia Mumtaz is probably the most established going in. But everyone just had no egos. Everyone was there and to perform, and everybody also respected that the crew are there to do their jobs. So, for example, me miking somebody. When a sound person is to mic someone, it can often be, you're entering somebody's private space. You often have to deal with their clothes, put your hand around the collar and stuff just to get the mic right. If you're not able to get the mic in the right place, then it won't sound good. You have a boom as well, but you always want to have this mic on too. So the fact that all the actors were so easy and kind of just open to me doing my job, and understood that the importance of sound and working with sound just made my job so much easier. There have been other shoots in which I haven't been able to do that, and the audio does suffer as a result. So for example, with Arif Saab, it didn't feel like it was his first film. We felt confident and established almost. Just very friendly in dealing with him. Iman and Danish, Ali Qureshi. And I remember with Samia Mumtaz, most of her scenes were kind of lying on the bed straight. So I'd put a mic kind of close to the neck area, but often she would have a big duvet covering that. So I'd have to keep reminding her just to make the duvet like a couple of inches below the mic. And she was easy about that, Obviously, when an actor's in the frame of mind and in the mood, and somebody keeps coming and asking them just to kind of adjust things, it can go either way. It's also not fair on the actor to have that. But she was easy, and I think it worked as a result. With Ali Qureshi, just like funny story I remember. So sometimes you have to use tape to tape the actor's skin, to tape the mic to the actor's skin, and he was very friendly and very he was lovely about it, but he was definitely a little bit like a bit of a wuss, I would say, when a little piece of tape was on his he's got some chest hair, but it became like a little funny joke between us. And yeah, everyone was lovely to work with, really easy. Also, the wardrobes were easy, not noisy, so things worked out well. Yeah, and I'm grateful for that.
There's two scenes that I feel where, as a filmmaker, as the director of the film, I think I was very unfair to you. Like, I really sort of, took all your devices and all your sort of, strengths away, and then put you in a position where, but again, I think that's definitely two scenes where the visual or the video was preferred for many reasons. One, for very complicated reasons. The other could have been avoided, but I think we also shot the whole film in about 21 days. So, it was a very tight schedule. So number one, the Milad.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम अंकल जी।
वालेकुम सलाम, की हाल है
जी? ठीक।
और दस अबू ठीक है तेरा?
अंकल जी ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਨਵਾਈਟ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਸੀ।
इनवाइट? ਕਿਹੜਾ ਇਨਵਾਈਟ? ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਇਨਵਾਈਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ।
अंकल जी ਇਸ ਸਾਲ ਨਾ ਥੋੜੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਪਾਬੰਦੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਸਿਰਫ ਉਹੀ ਲੋਕ ਨਾਤ ਪੜਨਗੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਨਵਾਈਟ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਸੀ।
I now firmly, particularly that scene, when I look at it and when I listen to it, I'm like, no, I can tell it's India. Of course it's India, and it really lacks that life, it lacks that nuance, it lacks that breadth and believability, which the rest of the film has. So a little bit about that scene, and then the barbershop. Although you were so unhappy with the barbershop, but trust me, we didn't do ADR, no ADR, zero ADR of that, and that sound turned out brilliant.
अल्ताफ
जनाब,
तेरे नाल एक गल करनी सी।
करो जनाब।
So, and if you have another scene to recall and talk about, with these two, definitely I would want you to recall with whatever misery or
No, but the Milad was completely out of our control. There was nothing we could do. I guess we're also just all so creatively involved when we're shooting that kind of at least for me, stepping back and seeing the bigger picture sometimes I'm not able to do. But I mean, that was a pressure situation, and there's really not much we could have done about it. So in hindsight, it makes complete sense that we had to go the way we did. The barbershop also, I remember, I mean, I had forgotten about that scene, but now I just remembered, because it was a very busy market area, and yeah, it was difficult then, but it worked out. I had forgotten about that. The only other one I think I could remember was there was that scene when the policemen were dragging the trans actors out of the house or the flat and taking them away.
ਕੀ ਰੌਲਾ ਪੈ ਗਿਆ ਹੁਣ?
ਕੱਢਦੇ ਪਏ ਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬੜਾ ਵੈਸੇ ਕੁਸਰੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਨਾ ਗੰਦ ਪਾਇਆ ਹੈ
And then there was a big crowd there, and there was a sort of like making a lot of noise and things like that. But again, we were shooting in a public space, rushing for time, and people outside the shooting space were also kind of were kind of getting a little bit impatient with things, like the public. So that was massively. I felt like I could have. At that moment, I was like, maybe we can do this a bit better, just to get some more control. But I mean, I know it was impossible. Yeah, you're very easy to work with, actually, and I guess because you're a filmmaker rather than just somebody you're into the story. What I mean is that you're into the story also, probably because you act, and you approach it from a way where some other directors that I've worked with don't necessarily, and so I understand where anytime that you would ever say that like we have to go, we have to like just we'll deal with it later, it makes complete sense in hindsight.
Thank you, Faiz. No. I mean, when I recall things that we had to deal with, but also I mean just saying that in the whole sort of frenzy of it, there are decisions that you cannot stick by in the end. You regret a lot. I mean, for me, one of the funniest sort of moments through the film also is the scene in which I'm dancing, which I'm directing. And that was the first time I was like, what? Like, I'll be in the background and Faiz just wants the music off. Like, I am dancing to no music. And I remember you put an earphone in my head, and I think somebody had the thing on the phone, but because of my excessive extra movement, it would keep falling out, and I was like, forget it, I'll just dance to a tune in my head like a crazy person then. But things that I learned, and honestly, they mattered so much to the overall feel at the end. So Faiz, now a lot of people are noticing one other thing in Zindagi Tamasha, and I mean they're open and free to critique it and criticize it, and people are liking it or not liking it for whatever reason. But they do feel that there is something interesting about the technique of storytelling. The silences are also very palpable and noticeable. There are long moments when there's only sound, and which is for sound design and things, but having said that, and it lacks music, that way it's not really filled up with a lot of background score. But I know it for a fact because through the process, the sound designer came on board, and in the mixing phase also, a lot of those silences have the sound that you recorded, because I remember that, on TV, for example, the go-to thing would be, there's no dialogue, don't mind the actor, we don't need the whole, although as we know that you sometimes do end up recreating footsteps and rustles and things, but so just dealing with that silence, and because I saw you being just as equally meticulous about the walks, or just somebody just sitting down and not doing anything. So I would like to talk about the silence of Zindagi Tamasha and recording that.
So generally my workflow is to record everything at all times. Often with the boom, if there's no dialogue, I'll see where the camera is positioned and kind of whatever the camera perspective is, have my boom pointing at the same thing. A few reasons for that. One is I don't think we had locked who was going to do post-production while we were shooting. So, if it's somebody that isn't that experienced or somebody that has no link with Pakistan and Lahore in specific, just to be able to create that world authentically can be difficult or time-consuming or very expensive. And this film wasn't a huge budget film, and it was also done quite quickly. So obviously I wanted to record whatever I could in the best way, and then whether you can choose in post whether you want to use it or not. You have the option. So even something small like just a crossing, somebody walking past the frame or something like that. The other thing is sometimes scenes don't have, in Zindagi Tamasha and also in any other project, film, web series I've ever done, when I'm reading a script, it's often written in the sense that there'll be a description and there'll be character name and then that character's dialogue and then next character's dialogue. Often in the description, things are written, for example, it'll say that, Danish coughs, or Danish lets out a yelp or something like that, for example. Something that's not dialogue, and he might not have any dialogue in the scene, and so it's not written in that format, but in the description it says that he's making a sound that's coming from his mouth. So for me, that's dialogue. Like every breath, every sigh, every any expression that comes out of the human mouth of a person who's in front of camera, usually, I want to record authentically. So I'll always roll that, and that's, I think, where the nuances in the performance often come from. Delivering dialogue is one thing. You can sometimes do that in ADR convincingly if you're just repeating lines and if the lip sync matches. But it's the little pauses and the little gasps or little breaths or sniffles even that kind of come between the lines, or in a scene that doesn't have dialogue, but you're close up on someone's face and you can hear them breathing. All that stuff is like gold to me. I actually get more excited about those things than the dialogues. So there's that. And then for the scenes which don't have any like expression from the face, but you see lots of things happening in the frame, but there's, traditionally wouldn't necessarily need to record sound for that. It's mostly just because we're in the space, I'm there. We're in Androon Lahore, very specific setting. Will we ever come back to that? Will I be able to come back to that during post-production if the sound designer needs these sounds? Maybe, maybe not. So I just want to get it then and there. And it'll almost never be as real. It'll never be as real as when you're there on set. So yeah, that's why I'm a stickler, I think, for those kind of things. There's a real pain in the, behind often for the rest of the crew. Getting everyone quiet for a non-dialogue scene is like the hardest part of my job.
I know. I don't know. Crew also, sometimes it's not just the surroundings. Our crew in general, I feel they're noisy most of the time. And just, teaching them a basic sort of, step A, B, C, you can make the noise and then go away. And even, like using their phones, etc., even if they're not talking, don't have that. I remember there was this focus puller had a very noisy.
Every hour he'd have a little beep.
And I think that one scene in particular, which was definitely, a lot of people find it very heartbreaking, and it is a very important moment. And I think that's perhaps the only time when the film almost tilts towards melodramatic, slides, sort of, it kisses on melodrama a little bit. And in that scene, I remember you were furious, and very rightly so. Yeah, no, I've also seen the crew people or temporary, just people or like production crew at that too. People just don't value basics like that they cannot wear noisy shoes around a set, whether it's on location or whatever, Faiz, now there was a lot of singing in the film too, right? And particularly in Rahat's case, for example, he had these two important bits, where in the beginning, the first scene of the film is when he is reciting a naat, and then, he recites the Sera. And then we had the amazing Gogi ji come in And I remember that, as a recordist, you are not only listening to the sound, and then you are a very musical person and a musically aware person too, but they're both like off a little bit, and it is noticeable. But to be honest, somehow that worked for me, because for Rahat it totally works. That he's not a star. He's really like in the middle of the middle type.
Yeah.
Like every he's literally like a mediocre as a character. But still, I remember you always had like a review after the take that you wanted me to be sure that okay, this was like off to this degree. And then when Gogiji also comes, she's singing with this whole abandon, and but she goes off the. So when you're recording song like that, say, or when people are singing, how does your brain and your ear sort of, how do they work together?
So, like you said, for the Rahat case, I think it adds to the character. If it was perfectly in tune and everything, it would be, it wouldn't help the storytelling, I don't think. So, for him, for example, as a character, I think he's passionate about what he does, rather than he's amazing at what he does, So that kind of works out well, him not being able to sing in key. How does my brain process it? I think, so for him, I understand that it works out like that, and then that's fine. In other situations where you have music and you're singing, then it's a little bit trickier to do. So similar to your example of when you were dancing without music, obviously if you're recording somebody singing, you can't have music playing in the background. Technically, it just doesn't work out properly in terms of how we shoot and in the edit and everything. So then you often have to hide earpieces and things like that, and then get the character to sing. So that's a lot of collaboration. But a separate note kind of on just how my brain processes things that I record. We can do 10 takes of one scene, and if you ask me at the end what the dialogue was, I'd have almost no idea what the actors were talking about. I read the scripts before the scene, so I know who's talking when. So I know my cues and when to swing the boom, but I really have almost no. When we're rolling, I have no idea of what they're talking about or how good the performance, the acting performance was. It uses a different part of my brain where I'm just listening out for external sounds like a car going by, or somebody, like something that shouldn't be there, like a footstep or a crow in the middle of the night or something like that. So just listening out for those things rather than any content, any story content, which is something weird. I think it just happens naturally. It's not something I've trained myself to do. When we cut, if the director asks me, did they say this line or this line? I have no idea. But I can tell you when a sound that shouldn't have been there was there.
So that also sort of brings me to another interesting question, and it kind of really came as an aha right now. You don't speak Punjabi and you don't understand Punjabi. I mean, you do understand maybe because now, but some parts of the film are like proper Punjabi, right? I mean, between Iman and Arif Saab, of course, or between Iman and Samya, some scenes are very Urdu-ish in nature, but the flavor is Punjabi. So now, as sound recorders, when you have a language that you are familiar with, but you do not know the nuance, or even sometimes this basic vocabulary of the language, how does it feel? Like, is it a big challenge? Like if you were to shoot, say, a French film or like a German film, or I don't know if you know either of those, but any, how does that work?
So similar, like if it was a foreign language film that I really don't understand at all, it might be a little bit tricky, but only because I wouldn't know if there's any improv happening. So for a language like Punjabi, which is, I can understand, I mean, I can't understand it, but I can understand the gists and everything. And I know if, for example, if Sadaf's character gives a line and then her mother replies, and Sadaf says something really quickly that's not in the script, but is reacting to what the mother said, I can kind of sense who's going to say when. So the main issue is because I have to aim my boom at the person who's speaking, obviously. So that's when the language thing helps a little bit, but otherwise it really doesn't matter. I mean, when I watch Zindagi Tamasha, the first time I saw it complete was, like a month or so ago when it was released on YouTube, and I watched it with subtitles. I had to watch it with subtitles to get the whole gist of it. So the foreign language thing doesn't really affect me on set so much. Pretty, like I said, I don't really know what the actors would be talking about, even if they were talking in English or in Urdu during the scene. I'm just listening for other sounds that shouldn't be there.
And my last two questions. Number one, your relationship with Lahore through Zindagi Tamasha. I mean, again, I feel it's very tough for the cast and crew to accept the location, because we are technically borrowing from it. I mean, we are the aliens in that situation. So there's just a certain degree of it which can be controlled, and then it's more about owning it or just accepting that, this is what it is, and only to this degree we'll be able to control things. But not just sound. Androon Lahore has way too many stray animals, and I know Zaidi would just go crazy sometimes because so you really owned, if not Lahore's, but all the animals of Lahore in the world city wherever we were shooting. So that your relationship with the cats and dogs of Lahore and the bakris of Lahore, and Lahore is not a good place for vegan food, right?
No, I mean, the animals generally, wherever I shoot, even if it's in Karachi or sometimes in the mountains also, I try and keep a packet of cat and dog food in my sound bag with me, just to feed any animals, because you always see some animals around that need some, that haven't eaten. And then you see how many people there are in the film crew, and people really just stuffing their faces. So I don't eat any meat, but I am glad when there is meat on set, because then that means that you can feed the animals around. There were lots of animals in Androon Lahore, obviously, but luckily there were also lots of places you could get food from, small little shops around there. So I tried to keep them fed. And other than that, I mean, the people are really friendly, so it was really nice to shoot there. It was very smoggy, I remember. This was maybe November we were shooting. So this is, pre-COVID and everything, but my brother had told me he was kind of into good air at the time, and he just got like an air purifier at home. I think he was just experimenting with stuff. So he said, this is a good mask, you should take it just in case. And it was amazing. I didn't know much about masks pre-COVID, but that mask helped me with the smog a lot. The smog added a character, I think, visually, especially in some of the scenes we did by the river. That felt quite nice. It was a fun shoot. I just remember it being, I wasn't exhausted by the end. I had a very good time. So just, shooting out, living in a hotel and shooting out of your home city can sometimes be frustrating and lonely and just not a good time. But Zindagi Tamasha was the complete opposite. I met some really nice people, got to work with you for the first time. Khizr, the DP, who I'm currently shooting with these days, he's like one of the easiest DPs to work with. He's just so chill, so stoic. Nothing really he doesn't get down about anything. So sometimes when you're trying to shoot sound on location, you need to close windows and things like that to keep the outside sound from getting in. Sometimes DPs don't like that, obviously, because it affects their light or affects just how the frame would look. His is cool. He's saying, just do whatever you want, like go for it. I think so. I was very lucky to be able to work with him and with Sundas as an AD, and with you guys who were just kind of filmmakers rather than just trying to make a big ad or something where it's all about the visual. And easy. And the accommodation was nice.
And that also, I think, brings me to Shax. I think he was a part of your team, and it was a two-people army, technically, the sound. But Shaq was also very diligent and efficient with his boom whenever we had, but most of the time you're doing the boom yourself. You love sort of operating the boom. Faiz, now, I can definitely go on for hours, but I don't want people to think that we're just having a chat between us and boring, maybe, but we're not. I'm so riveted by what you have to say. Faiz, Zindagi Tamasha became, and this is perhaps a very personal thing, but I think most of the cast and crew felt like that. There came a time when I felt it was not safe to stay connected to the idea of being a part of it, and sometimes it was very physical, that sense of, oh, whatever accusation, whatever controversy, whatever was being slapped off the film, and the trouble kept sort of uh, mutating, and it really became out of control. And emotionally also, I think it did create damage of various degrees to all of us. But I think now I feel that it's that moment when I want to reclaim it, I want to re-own it, and I want to also return it to all of you who've been a part of it, like in such massive ways. So literally, this little sit down is also about telling you that this is your film, and I'm so grateful that we made it together. And I hope that the scars of Zindagi Tamasha would become invisible, and we can just recall it as something that was interesting and at least from the heart. And so, how do you feel about reclaiming it, or at least it just come back at least?
I'm immensely proud of Zindagi Tamasha. It's probably one of the projects I'm most proud of as a complete package and a product. I hadn't seen the final cut till it was out on YouTube, and I just watched it like 3 times back to back. Loved it. So I'm just relieved and happy and proud that now people can get to see it. I don't think anyone can really fathom or relate to how you must have felt for the 2-3 years where it was just kind of in limbo. And obviously, because it's something that you had been working on for a while, and something you had put in your money and time and energy and love into, and then for it not to be able to come out was just I can't even imagine how you felt, but it's out, and that's amazing. And I've seen the responses that people have been giving publicly, and then also just people messaging me, that people that aren't on social media, people I haven't spoken to in many years, reaching out and just saying this is such an amazing and important film. I'm just so glad it's out there. And when it was in the news for not being out, and it was trending, and there was hashtags and stuff like that, there was a lot of hype behind the film. It's lived up to the hype in terms of how important and essential and what a good overall product it is, for sure. And luckily also people have realized that the reason for all that negative commotion taking place was absolute bollocks. It didn't make any sense once people have seen it. Like, there was really, the subject matter is religion, and and Islam in particular, and I think that just got people a bit sensitive. But there's really nothing in the film that portrays it in a negative way. It's a story of one man and his family, and he happens to be an Athwa. It's just such a beautiful film, and I'm so happy and proud to be part of it. It was amazing. Let's do Zindagi Tamasha 2 whenever you're ready.
Faiz, Zaidi, this is heartwarming, and thank you for making Zindagi Tamasha with me. Aakhri baar. Now you watched it thrice, and you watched it quite recently. Any moment that stays with you, like in a way that you can also disconnect the process or the shooting or the technicalities, like any moment from the film that speaks to you, that you want to sort of keep somewhere safe, that this is a good bit that I saw or witnessed.
I mean, on a personal level, many scenes that we shot, I kind of reimagined in my head, which I do when I watch any film that I had worked on, and I watch it a bit later. This was 5 years later, getting to see it. So many memories just came back of the locations and where we were shooting and interactions and all those things. So those were fun. Maybe the second time I watched it, that's what I was taking in. The first time I watched it as just this is something I haven't seen before. And the third time I watched it, I was really kind of just kind of watching it again for fun, I guess. A few moments that really stuck out were Arif Hassan's performance in a number of places just really stuck out to me, and not necessarily the scenes where he was talking in. It was more the expressions in the eyes. I think when in the scene where he goes to the space that you're dancing in, and he's just and he sees it for the first time, and he's just surprised at what's going on there, and doesn't know how to show it. That scene really stuck with me. Just his facial. His expressions and his eyes, I thought that was really brilliant. And then towards the end also, I mean, you know, I had worked on it, but it had been a while and my memory is quite terrible generally. So even just, I didn't 100% remember how it ended. So watching that was like, oh, wow, that happened. And then the music and just watching it as a whole, I think everything come together just made it like kind of a new viewing experience, but also with a bunch of, I guess, nostalgia almost, thinking about how much fun it was to shoot that and work with such a great crew and such great actors and a very fun director. It did feel heavy sometimes. I remember when we were shooting it, there were some moments where I was like, this is brilliant, but you know, but very cool, I guess, but just kind of heavy.
Faiz Zaidi, thank you. And a very Lohari Jappi coming your way. So thank you very much. Thank you.
See you soon. Thanks so much.
See you soon. And I'll catch you all with another episode of Zindagi Tamasha Deconstructed.